see. All right, and we are live. Welcome, everyone. This is David Arhan, and today with me, I have a very special guest. I have Top J, John. You might know him from the hit show Fishtank. And before I have John introduce himself, I just want to make a note for the people in the stream. This is something we talked with John before the stream started, but he, due to an NDA, right, he won't be answering questions specifically about Fishtank. So if you have any questions about that show, if you want to get some juicy rumors out or anything like that, unfortunately, this is not the stream for it. We are going to be talking about different topics. We're going to be talking about different things in the stream. But, you know, having said that, just wanted to make that note. And having said that, how are you, John? Hopefully you're doing well.
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for asking. And you want me to give out my social medias right here real quick?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So my Instagram account is businessjack2022. My Twitter account is jontent. My YouTube is jontent. Pretty simple. Those are the three main ones. I'm having an amazing day. It's pretty sunny out. I saw the sunrise this morning. It was awesome.
All right, yeah, that's great to hear. So just to let people in the chat know, we will be taking super chat questions. I might take questions from the audience if they're especially related to the topic at hand. But I mean, I might miss those questions as well. But the super chat questions, unless again, if they're about John's personal life, you probably won't answer. If it's about Fishtank, you probably won't answer. But if it's about, you know, Christianity, if it's about like stuff that he, like projects that he does or kind of advice that he might give to you, yeah, you'll definitely answer those questions. So the main thing that I want to kind of talk about as someone who, like, my channel is about. My channel is specifically about, you know, Orthodox Christianity, and I kind of talk about the Bible. I talk about church history, various different church fathers, and various different theological stuff as well. Some of my videos are basic, some of my videos are more advanced. The reason why I'm telling you this is because what kind of interested me at first is kind of you were basically the guy in the show, and like afterwards that you basically take your faith quite seriously, and I pretty much like that. So the first question I want to kind of start with is, what made you become Christian? Or maybe you were born to Christianity, but you just took it more seriously at some point in life. What's your thought process regarding that? Like, what's making you? What's the reason for the zeal for the Lord that you have, so to say?
So I've always believed in God. Like I was born into it. And there was like a gap where like I didn't read the Bible for a long period of time or really do anything, but I still believed in God and still prayed on a regular basis. And I really got back into it around age 16. And then I haven't really let go of it since then, which is nice. But there's a few biggest memories that stands out. One of the biggest memories, I remember as a little kid, we always have these nightmares. Like I never had a dream until roughly age 7, just only nightmares. And there was this one night I was having this nightmare, and it was like always this demon, like, you know, harassing me and stuff. And he said he was going to kill me, and no one was going to find out. Is what he told me. And I remember waking up to myself strangling myself that night. It was kind of scary. I remember praying to God that night, and you know, I was obviously pretty sad. And the next day, I didn't have a nightmare. I actually had a dream instead, which was pretty cool. Because I remember waking up crying to that too, because I never had a dream before. Like I always just had a nightmare, you know, of like just being killed as a little kid. That's probably the most memorable thing I could say about God that I've had.
Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. So I just kind of want to ask just to make sure. So as a little kid, you were basically having the same kinds of dreams pretty much until you kind of, you know, start praying for like,
Yeah. So I've always had this dream. Well, it was a different dream every night, but it was always the same demon. And he was always just like trying to kill me and stuff, and harass me. That's essentially what it was.
Yeah, and so like you kind of prayed about it. You prayed for, I guess, not to have that nightmare anymore, and like
Yeah.
ever since then, you didn't have. So ever since then, you don't have nightmares in general, or that specific nightmare. Maybe you have
Every once in
few
a while, I have
nightmares.
a nightmare,
Mm-hmm.
but the biggest thing that I got out of it
Mm-hmm.
was I started to have regular dreams after that. Because I used to only have nightmares every single night. Um, but like it's not like that anymore though. Well, it's like every night a nightmare.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of like one of the prayers that we have in the Orthodox Church is that like we pray for a dreamless sleep, not specifically in the sense like dreams are evil or something like that, but kind of that a lot of nightmares, sometimes they appear as good, sometimes they are as bad as you noted, might have the purpose of like kind of like psychologically damaging us in a sense, or kind of giving
Yeah.
us these like wrong impressions, right, about ourselves, about reality. And so it's quite interesting that like seeing stuff like that, because this is like what you just told me. I mean, some people, like some like hedonistic or secular atheistic people, might think that this is kind of just ridiculous or just psychological, but this is something that I've heard a lot about. This, like, you're definitely not the first one I've heard about, like,
Yeah.
that had kind of this kind of an experience. And I think in a sense this is kind of like a more casual, you can say like a casual supernatural experience or of some sort.
Yeah. So I've
Mhm.
looked into it a little bit too. I guess that's pretty common. But I guess there's supposed to be like this one specific demon that attacks younger kids on purpose. From what I looked into, because I didn't thought about it for years and years, and then just recently I was thinking about it. It's like I wonder, was this like actually like a demon, or was it just a nightmare? And it's actually extremely common for little kids to die in their sleep, or for little kids to almost die in their sleep, and they always say it was a demon.
Was it the Hat Man? That's one I know of, but
Well, in my nightmares, he would always take different forms. Sometimes he was a cat. Sometimes he was like, I don't know, like a real figure. I don't know his figure exactly, but it was he always looked different though. But he always had the same voice and the same energy with him.
yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah. Yeah, I because I like this. It's the Hatsman stuff is like quite like recent. I think like a year ago it started to like occur again. Like a lot of people are having the same dream and stuff like that. So I kind of thought it was that like that. But yeah, as I said, that's one book that I kind of read that might be, maybe it is relevant. Um, I don't actually think it's. I was thinking of The Soul After Death by Father Seraphim Rose, but I don't think it was talking about dreams. So aside from the nightmare stuff, like, are there anything? Is there anything else that you kind of like you would like to like pick out from your life, like some point in your life that kind of made you say, "Aha, this is something that kind of just like makes me realize that God is real, right? And Christianity is true, and like I have to like take it more serious." Or is this kind of like the
So
main one that you have in
like
mind?
I have lots of memories that I can point to when my relationship got stronger, or do you mean specific things that I know that could prove God is real and stuff like that?
Stuff that like made your faith stronger, let's say.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um, one of the ones when I was roughly 16 was I found this Facebook group talking about God, and it wasn't like most of the churches here locally, like they talk about God, but like they always push an agenda. So I usually try to avoid places like that. Um, so I went here. I found this Facebook group, amazing group. The pastor on the group was amazing. I do not remember his name. I wish I did. Um, and then soon after that, I met this person named Katie, and she would help me do Bible studies. We basically did Bible studies almost every night, and it was pretty amazing. So I have dyslexia. I'm bad at reading too. So by her helping me back then, it meant a lot. It was pretty cool, helpful. Um, that was another big one. And then a couple years ago, I almost died. Like I was like having a heart attack at the gym. Um, so for some reason, I wanted to get bigger. I was bulking up, and I was making this drink to increase my blood pressure because I read online high blood pressure you could get bigger faster. Wasn't the smartest idea. I will tell you that. And I just got started my warm up, just doing some squats real quick. I stood up and I instantly fell to the ground, soaking wet and sweat. My heart was going insane. I lost my vision. I lost my hearing. Was just gone. I lost my smell. I couldn't even talk. I couldn't even move. Like I lost every sense. And then I was like, I just been able like, whoa, I'm dying. So I just like accepted it. It's like I was okay to die. But then I had a thought of there's specific people that depend on me. And I was like, oh man, these people, they really depend on me. So I asked God real quick, like, could I stay just until they don't need me anymore? And like I know it sounds real, but like I felt like I was like leaving my body. But then after I did that prayer, I don't know, I just woke back up and I felt pretty good afterwards.
Yeah, that sounds pretty fascinating. Yeah, definitely. Don't do don't do what John did.
Yeah.
That's a very easy way to
Make
lose
it
your
fast.
life. Yeah, definitely. Even with like more casual stuff like creatine and like protein powder, like even with that, like my recommendation personally is just like, be casual about it. Don't go beyond what is recommended. You definitely took on an adventure, but I'm glad you came out safe. $10 from Code Santos. Appreciate the super chat, my friend. What a collaboration. Peace and love to you both. My respects to John for not covering his lamp in the fish tank. May the Holy Spirit guide us all to truth. Appreciate it, Code. Appreciate
What does
it.
lamp mean?
I don't really recall particularly, but I think it might have been. I don't remember. For not covering his. I don't really particularly remember because it's been a while. It's been a pretty long while since that part of the show ended. So maybe he can clarify what he meant in the live chat, because I don't remember either. And something that I had in mind is I guess this is kind of relevant to the first question that I had to you. With kind of Christianity, what would you say, like kind of more on a basic fundamental level, how did taking the faith seriously help you with your life, aside from some of the stuff that you mentioned, kind of the more practical aspects that it kind of helped you out, like maybe discipline, right, for example?
So I pray to God on a regular basis. I probably pray to him multiple times a day. I feel like he's helped me out a lot. Like I pray to him for strength, and I pray to him for my future. And because back in December, I made a plan for what I want in this future and how I'm going to do it, what I want to accomplish, and part of my plan is obviously to bring more people to God and more people to find out who he is. There's a big part of it. And there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that was missing. One of the pieces was to become famous, and God landed me that opportunity on Fishtank, which is going to launch me up to where I need to be. And by me doing that, I'm going to be able to bring a bigger audience to God. But I think everything prayer to God is extremely powerful, because I wouldn't be here where I am right now if I didn't pray to God. That's just a fact. If I didn't pray to God, I wouldn't be here right now for multiple reasons.
Yeah, and he's basically the lamp stuff. He was just referring to the faith, talking about Matthew 5:15. I kind of thought it was something related to fish tank, but he's basically saying it was really nice to see you kind of being open about your faith, and I appreciate that as well. I thought it was kind of really cool about it. It wasn't I didn't think it was. It wasn't obnoxious. It was more kind of casual, kind of this is who you are, right? And it's that was pretty cool about it. So, so kind of moving from. Oh yeah, I kind of forgot, because I remember seeing you you said something about this in the Twitter space. right, in a couple of weeks ago. And it was kind of surprising to see. So I kind of like, I would love to kind of have you talk a little bit more about this if you want to. But in the Twitter space, right, someone asked you like what form of Christianity you were interested in, and you said Orthodox Christianity. And as an Orthodox Christian myself, I was really happy to hear that. I'd love to see you become part, come to the church and all that. But I kind of want to ask you, do you still think that way, or like how do you look at this?
Yeah, so I think that's the best one, and I believe that's the best one for a few different reasons. Because I've been reading the Bible, and I don't really see anywhere in the Bible where it says do not follow the commandments anymore. And a lot of regular Christians, they don't think you have to follow the commandments. And I believe it's because the way the pastors or the priest teaches it, they teach it kind of wrong. And also my really good friend Stefan and his friend man, I forget his name, but anyways, both of them, Stefan has spent years and years studying all of this, and his really close friend spent almost close to 3 decades studying this and going to actual locations in the Middle East to figure things out. And he knows Hebrew, and both of them are most definitely leaning towards an Orthodox Christian. And my friend Stefan, once he changed and really went to Orthodox Christianity, his whole energy changed about himself. He was like a completely different person, and it was like extremely amazing to be around him after that. Like, to be quite honest, I feel like you would love to talk to him sometime. Like, if you had him as a guest, you probably love him. But I think that's the 2 biggest reasons from him and his friend, and everything I've resourced on my own and learned. It makes a lot more sense. Obviously, I probably need to do a lot better at it because I do things that I'm not perfect at it, obviously, but I'm trying my best every single day though to better myself.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I don't know if there's any Orthodox churches near you or anything like that, and I'm not asking you to like dox your location or anything like that, but I think that will probably be, if it's, I will definitely recommend you visit an Orthodox church, kind of talk to the priest, go to the liturgy, and eventually, be part of the body of Christ. Because as I said, this is kind of one of the things that I focus on my channel. What I try to tell people is that ultimately, the Christianity, which is the body of Christ that he established, and the continuation of this in the apostles and the bishops, and the faith that they preached, has a unbroken 2,000 years lineage throughout some patriarchs, some bishoprics, throughout the faith that is preached by people of the time, right, and today being continuous. It is something that, like, once I kind of realized this kind of historicity, right, this continuation from the time of Christ to today with various different practices, various different beliefs, it seemed to me like a very clear-cut case that, if Christianity is true, this is the Christianity that I'm going to go for. And with your friends, with relation to your friend Stefan, I'd be quite interested. I think maybe after the stream you can kind of talk about this a little bit more. Does he have any social media presence, or is he just someone you know personally?
He doesn't have any social media presence, and he's a kind of a nomad. He's travels around a lot, but currently he is in Bend, Oregon, so I could probably get you guys connected if you wanted to.
Yeah, sure. I think we could talk about this after the stream. Yeah, I think that will be quite interesting to have him here. And as I said, you're welcome to any Orthodox church. I will say, like, I'm not like the owner, but I think you will be welcome at any Orthodox church. I will definitely recommend and tell you to eventually join the Orthodox Church. Of course, I also respect that you want to kind of take things at your own pace and kind of like look into this over time. And this is something that I'm not going to tell you to force you. And I would also like to ask you, if you have any specific questions about the faith, like maybe even in the stream, maybe after the stream, or anytime, like over email or anything like that, I'd be more than happy to help you. And another one of my friends who I think you will really like is really excellent, and I think it will be pretty nice if you guys stream together too. Jay Dyer, he's pretty cool.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, he's really much into like the geopolitics, conspiracy stuff as well. I'm interested in it a little bit too. I just kind of focus my energies on different kinds of stuff because I think like he's much more excellent in that, and I kind of think, oh yeah, I'm not gonna top him in that front, so I might as well help him out in some other stuff. It's kind of like my thought process, but I think it will be great if you will talk to him about some of this stuff as well. I think that will be an excellent stream.
Yeah. So, what's that one river called that got dried up recently in the Middle East? Do you know what I'm talking about? There's the
Can you
one.
say it?
There's
Can
a
you say it
river.
again?
Yeah, a river that got dried up in the Middle East recently. Talks about it in the Bible when it dries up. I think it's called the Mercedes River.
Are you referring to the Euphrates River? The Euphrates. Are you talking about the Euphrates River, or are you talking about something else? Maybe.
I think I might be talking about a different one, unless I'm pronouncing it incorrectly.
So you're saying this one recently dried up?
Yeah, it dried up recently, and talked about in the Bible how when this river dries up, it's supposed to be releasing like some spirits and stuff, or something like that. I forgot what the river was called though. I think it's called Mercedes.
Which book are you talking about? I think this is from the book of Revelation, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's definitely the Euphrates River.
Okay, Euphrates.
I'm hearing Mercedes, but I don't think that will be. It's probably Euphrates that you're talking about. Yeah,
okay.
The Euphrates River.
Okay. So when you look into the Bible, and you try and prove the Bible is real and God is real, what key points do you usually use? One of the ones I use a lot is giants. These giants. There's actually a couple museums in the United States with giant skeletons in it. That's one of the main ones I do. Then the one city where God rained fall on it. There's like they found the city with these little forgot what the chemical is called, but this purified chemical that it's like extremely flammable, which just proves it was raining on fall on that city as well. There's so much proof out there proving the Bible is true. I've noticed, let alone that proof God is true too.
So I guess you're asking me, like, you specifically look at a lot of the prophecies and some of the details mentioned in the Bible, and kind of like how some of it's happening today, how some of it's it's being realized today, and you kind of say that that's kind of something. Yeah, I understand that. The way I personally look at it, like before I became Christian, I was kind of looking at it at the same way as you do as well. And I think a lot of the prophecies and kind of like stuff like that, they do really confirm, they testify to the scripture, and stuff like the apostles, for example, like how they, especially after Pentecost, started preaching the faith, and pretty much 11 of them were martyrs to the faith, and John, Apostle John was the only one remaining. And the Christians being persecuted for what they believe in, this kind of like being a strong testament to the faith as well. So there's a lot of really interesting details like that, and kind of like the extra biblical historical accounts of Christ as well, from Josephus and other historical accounts as well. All of that stuff I think is really interesting, and they testify to the Christian faith. But when it comes to the proving of the Christian faith, I think from a materialistic standpoint, it is possible, as kind of ridiculous as it might sound, it's still possible to kind of like say, okay, well, this happened, but it might be explained in a different way. We just don't get it. Or kind of like, this prophecy happened, but I mean, that might just be a coincidence and stuff like that. The way I look at it is, in order to kind of prove the Bible, a way to prove the Bible, if we're going to go to the next level, right? Because, well, if you want to go to the next level, it's kind of just to showcase that the existence of God is necessary. Anything that you can have that you accept as logical, like logic itself, knowledge, all of these things have God as a precondition, right? For example, one of the videos that I did is that the laws of logic proves the existence of God. And the basic idea of the video was basically that laws of logic are abstract thoughts and they're necessarily true, right? And so
Yeah.
due to being abstract thoughts that are necessarily true, it means that there must be a necessarily existent mind, right? And a necessarily existent mind is going to be divine. It's going to be eternal because it's necessarily existent, right? In all points of time, it's going to exist, right? Because knowledge, right, logic, in all points of time, it exists, and it necessarily exists, right? Because if you were to say, for example, knowledge doesn't exist, right? Well, you will have to know in order to know that knowledge doesn't exist, which is obviously a logical contradiction, right? So it's self-evident in that sense, where the rejection of it, the denial of it, leads to absurdity. And so you can prove, and so if there is knowledge, then the precondition of knowledge, which will be God, which will be a divine mind, will also be true. And this divine mind will have to be personal, right? It can't be this kind of deistic mind that's like floating and doesn't really care about us, but it connects with these concepts with reality, right? For example, and it has to be a divine mind that is personal, that actually cares about human beings, which is why a true religion is going to be true religions. There's only one true religion, but a true religion is going to be one that's going to have a divine being that's going to reveal himself to human beings, right? Because of God being personal and so on and so forth. So that's one of the ways that I kind of will look at, right? And there's other arguments that you can kind of use too. One of them, and this kind of is in a sense it's an abstract argument, but it's a one in many argument, right? That in reality itself, we see a unity between unity and multiplicity, and so the divine being, which is the source of this, has to also have a kind of this bridge between unity and plurality. Well, the Holy Trinity, right? The Holy Trinity is one God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit is one God, but there are also three distinct divine persons, and the distinction does not cause a separation or division in God. That is, there aren't three gods, right? There's one God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, even though they're distinct persons, right? So this understanding of the Trinity also gives an account for unity and plurality, not being in contrast with each other and existing in unity. Because in some, for example, Hellenic views, there will be kind of like a plurality as having supremacy over unity, or the other way around, and it will kind of try to explain the world in that sense. And even some major religions, I think with Islam, Judaism, you kind of see this trend as well, although it isn't really answered a lot. It's only talked about in like very few theologians and such. But in Christian history, these were concepts that were actually very important in particularly the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th centuries. These were concepts that was talked about throughout various different church fathers. So that's kind of how I personally will look at. I certainly think the kind of like examples that you give, obviously I think they're good. They testify to the trueness of the Christian faith. But one of the reasons why I kind of am a bit skeptical about stuff like that is because, various different religions like Buddhism, Islam, they can also have claims to certain prophecies. And as Christians, we will kind of say, well, that's an example of demonic deception, right? For example, we will say that these are just demonic deceptions. Or some people, for example, they do DMT and stuff like that, right? They do drugs. And they think they see like divine beings and angels and stuff. But in reality, it's just Satan who is disguising himself as an angel of light, right? As Apostle John says, tricking these people.
That's an interesting topic. So I looked at this one study they do in Harvard, I guess. Well, people are doing DMT. Just to be clear, I've never done it, and I do not promote that drug. But they were doing a study on it where people would do it, and they've been mapping out, quote unquote, what they say, mapping out the DMT world. And multiple people are going through the same locations while they're there. So knowing if let's say what they're doing is true, if everyone's going to this one place, where do you think they're going?
Can you elaborate a little bit more? I'm kind of
so in this study, they have multiple people that would do DMT. Okay, and these people that do DMT, they go to the same place. They communicate with some of the same people, and when they come back, they map it out. And sometimes when a different person would go there, they would go to the same location. So essentially what they're saying is proving to be a real place, is proving to be multiple people could see the same people in the same places. So they're like just mapping it out is what they're saying. It's like, I believe it's Harvard that's doing it.
Yeah. I think like the way this is, look, I think one of the things that it proves, it does prove that there's kind of like spiritual world and component to it. But at the same time, What a lot of these people are preached with, like the whole DMT stuff, they're not preached about, the true faith or anything like that. What they end up preaching is that, everything is one. We're all just, we all just need to be nice to each other. And, God actually doesn't exist. I'm God, or like, blasphemy and stuff like that. And the verse that I was referring to was not from St. John, that was actually from St. Paul, 2 Corinthians 11:14, right? That Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. That is, he disguises himself as that. And this is one of the examples, right? These kind of like DMT trips is kind of these delusions, right? These spiritual delusions that people get themselves into, where they get a lot of these new doctrines, and they start preaching these new doctrines. When you ask them, where did you get these things from? Oh, I got it from visions, right? And it kind of is kind of strange. It's like, okay, but how do you, like, what makes you trust these visions in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's something that people need to be a lot more, not skeptical in the sense of like atheistic skeptical, but skeptical in the sense that, well, is it really for my benefit? Because the way I look at this is, let's say you're moving to a bad neighborhood, right? You're moving to a bad neighborhood, and you unlock your house, you push the door open, and anyone can come in, right? That's basically what a DMT trip is, right? Like, if you take drugs, you're basically doing that. So you're going to get a lot of people that's going to steal your stuff, right? They're going to ransack your house. They're going to ruin your life. And the good guests that you hope that will be there, well, they won't come, because they're going to see all the bad people come in. They're like, I'm not going to get in there. It's full of bad people, right? They're just here ransacking stuff. So it's the same thing with here, right? The kind of the ransacking of the soul is occurring with a lot of this kind of like DMT nonsense, if you ask me. But what is interesting, as you say, it's kind of like, it's a lot of people are realizing that there's actually a real spiritual component to a lot of this kind of stuff as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think so anything. All right. Oh yeah, another question that I had, which, if you have something to note, by the way, you can always interrupt me as I ask the question. But yeah, so I guess you kind of answered this, but I kind of want to get a fuller answer from you as well regarding this, right?
Okay.
So what would you tell people? Like, if you, like, let's say you have someone in front of you, and they're like, I want to believe, but I don't see any reason to, right? Like, what would you say to them to kind of like showcase like why you think Christianity is true?
Okay. If someone didn't believe in God, Christianity, Christianity, correct? Or God? Which one? Because I guess
it can, you can, depending on it can be both, right? At the end of the day,
if someone didn't believe in God / Christianity, I'd probably ask them first off why, to figure out where the basis stands from. It could be different reasons for every person. And let's say, like, I feel like the most common one, people say there's so much evil in this world. Okay, so I was like, okay, well, there's so much evil in this world. Well, for example, I've endured a lot of stuff growing up and doing, like, I've endured a lot of things, bad things, good things, mostly bad things. Okay, I would say to them, if I never endured those bad things, I wouldn't know how bad those are, and I wouldn't be able to be the person who I am now. Because I feel like, let's say if I never endured all those bad things, I wouldn't see it from like a different perspective. Versus if I never done it, I could probably be doing all these bad things to all these people all the time, not realizing how bad or how it would have made me felt. I feel like people have to suffer to an extent to become a better person. They have to endure things to become a better person. First off, if that's the talking point, that's what I would say first. Because I feel like I probably wouldn't be such a good person right now if I didn't endure all of those things. And then for believing in God more so, I would say I would probably talk a lot about my experiences personally with God. And then I'd probably talk about some of the similar things we've talked about, proving God is real. And then if they would be like, well, what's the point? Like, if I die, I die. I'd be like, well, if you die, like, wouldn't you want to at least go somewhere better than hell. Like think about this. If you don't like how this world is with all the evil here, if you say there's too much evil, think about what hell is going to be. Like if they're already complaining about the evil here, there's going to be more evil if they don't believe in God, if they don't accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. I feel like that'd be another really good talking point too. I don't know. I feel like I talk about it differently depending on each person, just because each person, they could be persuaded in a different way. But that's a general way I guess I would do it.
On hell, another interesting detail I'd like to point out, and I think this is a statement, this is a quote from it's not an exact quote that I have in mind, but something that Father Seraphim Rose says, who I think you will definitely love reading his works as well. He's a very recent he's a very recent, Orthodox, I will say, elder who has many different books that is very relevant to a lot of things that's going on in America specifically, right? About like religious experiences and kind of like creation and things like this. But one of the things that he says about hell is that hell is it's like the love of God that is experienced by the people who rejected him, right? And in other words, it's basically it's something that it's a choice that people themselves make in the first place, right? Because if in this life you're already denying several virtues and the good things about what makes people good, right? What makes a good life good. If you reject those things consciously in this life, then when you get to the very source of these things, you're obviously going to reject that yourself, right? So there's that kind of an aspect to it. And with relation to suffering, I think that's a very, very good point, because I think, and I will definitely agree with you that part of the reason why a lot of like the evil has been allowed is for the building of character, so to speak, right? And I think that's definitely a good way to kind of approach the whole issue of why is there evil in this world. It is really for the salvation of human beings, and also for human beings to acquire certain virtues that are sourced in God, right? Like being humble, and so for example, temperance is something that is built by rejecting gluttony, for example, right? So there has to be kind of like the option of gluttony in the first place to be temperate in order to have temperance.
What does gluttony mean?
Like eating a lot, basically.
Okay.
Sticking your face full of food, just eating a lot. Okay. Stuff like that, right? It's like if you resist that, then the kind of like the virtues that are natural to you come out as a result of it, right? And so it comes to what you said, is basically building character, becoming a better person by resisting evil things. So suffering and things like that, Christianity has a very important component to it. And if you look at like the Bible itself, and if you look at the lives of the saints, this ends up becoming expressed in a much more clear way. And in fact, Christ's crucifixion itself is kind of the apex form of suffering, even though he did not deserve any of the suffering, right? As Prophet Isaiah says, and it's for the salvation of all human beings as well, right? So, and what does Christ say? Take up your cross. We should be following we should be following Christ. Take up our cross, and it's the life of suffering is, in a sense, the life that a Christian lives. And I think this is something that we can kind of like accept as normal and just move with that. Any other comments that you want to make?
No.
Or we can move on to the next question if you want to.
I really like your points that you made on it. And then that was like, as you were saying with the gluttony, you have to learn how to resist all of that. I feel like that's a really good thing people need to try to learn, is how to resist all of that. Like there's a couple of things I'm still working on. Obviously, I'm not perfect, but I want to become perfect if I can. But yeah, no, I like your talking points though. They're good.
Yeah, I appreciate it. By the way, one of the things that I forgot to mention to the whole DMT discussion, Aleister Crowley, right? You heard of him at the very least before, right?
No.
Well, Aleister Crowley, he's basically, in a sense, he is the whole reason why this whole like DMT stuff and like occultism stuff in the West has become really popularized, right? Like doing drugs to like seeing all of these like spiritual beings, right, that you can access only by doing drugs and stuff. One of the spiritual beings that he sees is it's called a lamb, and it's literally an alien. Like it just looks like an alien. It's basically an alien. And like when you see a lot of like the stuff that's coming out of the United States with the whole UFO stuff, like I think that whole stuff is BS. I think that whole stuff, people are really seeing like, UFO experiences. I do accept that. I just think that, as Father Seraphim Rose also thinks, and he goes very in depth about this, a lot of those experiences are very similar to demonic possessions. In fact, I recently saw it on Twitter. Someone pointed out a document from FBI from the 1960s where they themselves say a lot of the UFO experiences that people are having is very similar to experiences of demonic possessions. Yeah. So I think that's something that people also need to be cognizant of, and I think that's a point that I'd like to make as well in regards to the whole like doing drug stuff. So basically, message of the story: don't do drugs, kids. It's not just because they're not just going to mess up your mind; they're going to mess up your soul, and it's not going to be.
Something I know from what I've learned about the aliens and all that stuff. They've been pushing that propaganda for over 50 years. So every country, they already have a plan, quote unquote, a plan. So when we get invaded by quote unquote aliens, the whole world will work together as one nation. So new world order stuff. It's just propaganda so they can work together, and I think it truly is just satanic stuff. Like if, let's say, quote unquote, if aliens invade, I don't think they're actually aliens. I think it's more like demons and Satan and all that stuff. That's why I think, like, I can send you a link to a documentary of this one guy did, proving it was they proved it pretty good. It was about a 6-hour long documentary in 3 different parts. But I think that theory is actually pretty on point with the reason why they're doing it. And so the short summary on why they're doing aliens. So they're going to have the first aliens come by, okay, quote unquote, which is going to be Satan and his people. And then they're going to come by and say, hey, we're the good guys. You guys are going to have to prepare and get ready for the bad guy aliens, quote unquote, which is going to be Jesus and stuff and God. And they're going to try to get the people to reject Jesus when he comes and to fight against him. Which would make sense. Like if you look at all these propagandas and all these different movies, for as long as you can think about, even video games like Halo, they try to just trash on God and all of his stuff. Like I can send you the documentaries. Like it's really on point. Like I think you probably agree with a lot of it.
Yeah, that sounds good. You can send it. You can send it on the private chat, and I can link it in the live chat.
Yeah.
I'll definitely check it out. And one thing I also just remembered now. This is quite interesting, and this is not so well known. But I did a video on this a couple of months ago. A friend of mine did a video on this quite recently. So in the 9th century, there's this bishop called Agobard of Lyons. He's a saint, and one of the things that happened to him is that like there's like I think a group of like 2 or 3 people come up to him, and they claim that they were abducted by a bunch of beings who are riding a ship. And when they say ship, they're literally talking about a boat, right? A boat that is flying in the air, right? They claim there's a boat flying in the air, and that they were stealing vet from the crops and stuff like that, similar to whole like UFO stories of today. And they were basically talking about all of that kind of stuff. And the bishop basically said, yeah. And like a lot of the people got scandalized and they're like, what's going on? The bishop basically came up to them and said, yeah, these guys are BSing. Like this is basically the work of demons, right? Yeah. And what I see from that is that, really this is just a repetition of an old myth, right? Like the whole UFO stuff. I think the whole UFO deception, there's probably a lot more stories regarding this. And we have a recorded instance of it from Saint Agobard of Lyons. And his work still exists today, right? Like you can read his work, and like these people claim they're from a planet called Magonia or something, a place called Magonia, right? They claim they're from there, and yeah, and that story is basically being repeated now today. It's like the same exact patterns that occurred back then is occurring today. The only difference is, now instead of flying boats, they have flying saucers because technology is you have uh, airships that kind of look like that, I guess, today. And so these demons are just they're not inventing anything new, right? They're basically repeating the old deceptions that they had. So I think that's something also to interesting point. But I think the theory you pointed out, the whole like, the demons are going to come in the form of aliens. They're going to say, "Oh, we're going to fight against the bad aliens."
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily is going to 100% happen, but I do think that can happen, right? Like that's that does exactly sound like something that they will try to do, pretty much. That definitely is quite
especially
interesting.
if they try and do the New World Order. Think about it, because all the countries already have an agreement. If some external thing were to invade, they would all the countries would work together under one nation. That's the whole Freemasons thing they want to do. New World Order, one country. So I could see them trying to do that just as propaganda to work so they could have power and control over everyone.
I just posted the document talking. Yeah, I definitely think so too. And a lot of these like elites, a lot of these like globalist elites and stuff like that, I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of them are very much in line with this kind of stuff as well. I think it's really them and demonic forces working together. And one of the things that I kind of like, the whole like people like to talk about Eyes Wide Shut or the Bohemian Grove stuff, and it kind of reminds me of some of the older writings about certain rites that some Greeks wrote, right? I think in the 1st and 2nd centuries. And I read this from Dr. David Bradshaw's Aristotle East and West. And one of the things that caught my eye is that it was believed that certain divine beings gave rituals to human beings, so that if these human beings did those rituals, they will attain the power of the gods, basically, right? And I think a lot of like the weird stuff that's becoming publicized, especially today, it is actually, I will say, those demonic rituals that these people are partaking of and they're partaking of the kind of, it sounds a bit schizo, but it's very much in line with, at the very least, what was talked about in the Greek pagan religion in the 1st and 2nd centuries, that like these rituals are being sent by all of these so-called divine beings. And if you partake of these rituals and if you do these rituals, then you will have the powers of the gods, basically. And I think this is pretty much what is going on here. Have you like kind of like, what would you say about that kind of stuff?
I think that is most definitely true. There's a lot of things out there like that. Like I know in the 80s, in the early 90s, the U.S. had a program called the Stargate program, and they were originally the people in that program were people with autism, and they would use them for remote viewing. And then eventually they started training the soldiers, and it would take the soldiers about 3 years of practice before they get like, so they would have the soldiers, remote viewing where your mind leaves your body or your soul leaves your body, and they would have them go to like Warsaw, for example, go to some military base over there, and they would come back and they would draw down the blueprint, and they would usually get about 80% accurate on the blueprint of a building or base they've never been to before. So obviously, all kinds of things have been happening for a while. What's your view on remote viewing? Is that satanic or is that good? What do you think?
So can you elaborate on what that is? I think I've heard of it.
Yeah.
But
So
what is it
remote
exactly?
viewing, is essentially you leave your body and you can go anywhere, anytime. Doesn't matter where it is or time. You could literally go there. You can even communicate with other people. There's been proof of that in the Stargate program when they had it. So like you physically not there, but your spirit or your soul, your mind is there. And you could do things, like you could see things, you could You could communicate with other people. So things like that, essentially. It's kind of like, I don't know if you ever watched Stranger Things. It's kind of like that. Stranger Things is actually based off of the Stargate program.
Okay. So here's the thing. And I think this will be relevant to, like, Father Seraphim Rose's The Soul After Death will be relevant to this. But the basic thing that I will point out is the body and the soul are united, and death, what we call death, is the separation of the two. So from what I'm hearing, right, it might seem like the soul is leaving, right, like the body
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
exactly.
It might be an introspection, a further introspection, but it might also be, it might also be part of delusion. I can't really say exactly like what I personally think it is, but with like stuff like that, as I said, I usually the first things I look at is that, okay, this can't be explained by materialism. This can't be explained by atheism.
Yeah.
This is not just some illusion that we're making. Like something really is going on here, right? But what exactly is it that is going on? The thing about the spiritual realm and the spiritual world is that we don't really have a lot of knowledge and guidance for it. And this is why we have angels, right? Because angels are the spiritual beings that help us, that minister to assist us, right? That's the purpose of their creation, is to they minister to God, and they minister and they help us in the spiritual realm, so to speak. So if the world is normal as it is in many ways, I mean, we have the angels to thank for that. And I think it might be kind of like a lot of this remote. It sounds to me like the demonic delusion, or maybe like if you want to kind of avoid that interpretation, it might be like a further introspection to the soul. But it sounds it's a US program, right? So it's going to be used for something bad.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, so I think the best thing that I can say, the main thing that comes to my mind is just exercise caution.
Yeah.
I would
Also,
definitely not recommend people to try to do remote viewing at all. This sounds like the similar experience with, like, moving to a bad neighborhood and opening your house and letting all of the demons come
but
in.
the thing is, too, you got to think about it. If your spirit leaves your body, okay, you're literally opening the door for something else to take it over. Like, you don't have any control of it if you leave your vessel. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, the life of a human being is in the soul, right? And so, in a sense, if the soul leaves, you kind of die, right? Like, in a sense, it's like a spiritual death, right? Like the logistic of it, the way I look at it, you might literally be possessed by a demon, and it's the demon that's like doing the remote viewing and just giving you the information to you, for example, right?
Exactly.
To me, makes more sense. And like at the end, as you said, right? Like, if what's going to replace the soul as it leaves or empties itself, it's going to be, well, anyone. And it's not going to be a good spirit. It's going to be an evil spirit, because the good spirit is always going to be fighting the evil spirit at the end of the day, and trying to avoid the evil spirit. And so I think this is very a lot of what the early Christians, like the 1st and 2nd century Christians, said as well, is that, like, when it comes to making choices in our lives, right? When it comes to doing good things or bad things, if we do good things, then we are, in a sense, possessed by God, specifically by the Holy Spirit, right? The Holy Spirit ends up doing these good works in us, through us, right? As St. Paul says. And so if we accept that communion, if we accept that, then we synergize with the will of God. If we do evil things, then we synergize with what? We synergize with the fallen angels, with the demons, with Satan, right? And we allow him, in a sense, to kind of possess us. And if we fully allow him to possess us, then that's at that stage, that's when things are very iffy. That's where you need exorcism, right? That's where you really, truly, everyone always needs Christ, but that's the moment where you specifically, okay, you need to really seek out for him, because at that stage, you're in a very dangerous situation. And I think the whole remote viewing stuff, I'm not going to make a exact comment, but I will harken a guess that a lot of these people who experienced remote viewing probably had a lot of issues after that experience. And I think I will be correct in assuming that.
Yeah.
Aside from that, so I think there's a lot of things that we kind of covered about Christianity and the spiritual stuff. So another thing that I kind of wanted to have you on to talk a little bit about as well. And again, to people in live chat, live audience, if you have any questions specific to John, just make sure these are not questions related to Fishtank or is like super personal space or something like that. You can ask your questions by super chat. You can support the stream by super chat, or you can ask it in a live chat, and I might take a look at it. The next question I kind of want to ask you is like, what do you think modern men, like men today, like what would you say men today lack in order to fix their lives, by your estimation? What would you recommend people?
So I won't be specific about the region I live in, but I don't know about other regions on how men are. But in the Western world, a lot of men lack a lot of things. I used to lack many things as well. I feel like one, people need to be physically fit. That's number one. If you're not physically fit, it's going to be a lot harder for you to be confident in yourself and do many other things. They need to be more assertive. They need to stop being cocks. That's another big one, is being a cock. There's a lot of guys out there that's cocks, and that's extremely real to me. Like sometimes I'd be walking and I notice there's a lot more cocks in wealthy groups of people. But I'd be like doing my job, and then I'd be like driving around, but I drive a party bus or limo sometimes on the weekends, and there would be like this wealthy couple, and the wife will always be trying to flirt with me right in front of the husband. And I'm like, what the heck do I even do in this situation? Because, it's my job. I got to be respectful and nice. But then at the same time, like, I'm not going to flirt back with you. Like, that just doesn't seem right. So, like, I usually, like, laugh it off. But I'm just thinking that husband literally did nothing in that scenario. Okay, I'm like thinking, what the heck? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, that's the definition as a cock. And like me personally, I would never have a wife who would do that. I want to be with a lady who would just flirt with another dude right in front of me. That doesn't make sense to me. It blew my mind to see it happen all the time. I feel like that's one of the big things people have to change. I feel like guys have to be more confident, they have to be more responsible in their life, and they have to be a lot better and take care of people. Like, there's too many guys that just play video games. I feel like I got my life together a lot more than the average guy. Even guys that's older than me, they don't even have their life together yet. And another thing, a lot of these guys, they expect the world from a female. Okay, well, how could you expect everything from a female if you can't even provide what you could do? Like, for example, like, there's this one guy here I know here locally. He's 22, maybe 24 now. And his mom still wakes him up for him to go to work. She still makes him dinner and breakfast, all kinds of stuff, okay? And he just quit his job recently without a job lined up. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing with your life? And all he does is get drunk, smoke weed, and gets fucked up every weekend. All he does is party. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I'm not personally friends with him, but I'm in mutual friends of him. And same thing with my mutual friend. Like, I told him, like, bro, if you want to better your life, you gotta stop hanging out with these people. Like, your potential is so high. You just gotta, like, I'm not trying to be mean, but you gotta get rid of those people, because the people you're around are who you're going to become. Like, the 5 closest people you are, or the people that you spend the most time or listen to, that's who you're going to become. And the work ethic these days is nowhere to be found. Like, I feel like you need work ethic to become a good person as well. Like, a lot of these people, they complain how they don't make enough money. But it's like, think about it. Like, if you look at what I'm doing, I have a part-time job on the weekends. And then I have a 9-to-5 job during the week as a commercial loan broker. And then I'm trying to have all these other businesses I'm doing as well. And now I'm doing social media. Okay, like, I'm doing all these things so I can make money and provide for the people that's close to me. Like, I have multiple people that depend on me on a regular basis. Most guys these days, they don't really know how to depend on themselves, I feel like, and they need to learn how to do that. Because there's some guys who still have the mommy and daddy paying for their insurance, for the car insurance or something like that. I feel like they need to become responsible They need to take care of themselves. They need to stop drinking. They need to stop wasting time. You need to work out. Like, I try to work out at least once a day. Like, it doesn't even have to be a long workout, but you need to get physically fit and you need to take your health. Because this is a temple. You got to take care of your temple first off. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things the guys need to work on. Like, there's a whole bunch of things females need to work on too. Like, as a female, how can you, like, lots of females, they expect double standards from guys. They expect the guy to take care of them, but then they don't expect to, like, do what they're supposed to do. Like, I'm a high believer in gender wars. Like, if whoever marries me, like, I'm expecting to take care of them. I'm expecting to have everything handled at all times for them. If something happens, I'm going to be there. If a problem arises, I'm going to be there. I don't want their brother or their father to take care of the solution. I'm going to be the solution. I'm going to be the man to help them out in every single problem they have. Versus, there's lots of females out there these days. They're with a guy who can't take care of them, in a sense. But at the same time, if I'm taking care of you, I'm going to expect certain things in return. Like, I'm going to expect you not to go out and go drinking every night and go out and party with your chick friends. Like, there's lots of females out there. Like, think about it. I'm not going to let my female hang out with a whole bunch of females that are hoes. Like, if you hang out with hoes, they're going to try to get you to be a hoe yourself. Like, it's just true. And I don't support that. I feel like there's a whole bunch both sides need to work on in the US. I've met females that's younger than me that's have like almost 100, slept with 100 guys. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you slept with 100 guys? Who are you? Who wants you at that point? Like, I'm not trying to be mean, but like, you can't just be sleeping around like that. Like I know I'm not perfect. I've slept with a few people, but I don't go sleeping around willy-nilly. Like, if I'm sleeping with you, like, I can see myself having a future with you. Like, I know that's not even good, but I can say my body count's under 10. who most people in the Western world can't even say that. They think it's bragging right. It's like, oh, I've been with 30 people. Yeah. It's like, well, what? How's that bragging? Like, what that
A lot of people think that like you being a man is defined by how many people you sleep with or something dumb like that. I mean, it has nothing. If anything, there's like an inverse correlation because, as you said, our bodies are a temple, and the way we treat our bodies is going to be we're going to be judged by these things, right?
Yeah.
If we treat it like trash, then we are accepting becoming trash. We're treating ourselves like trash. We see ourselves as trash, and we see ourselves as an easy person, basically, in a sense. It's kind of like it's definitely not good that this is a very widespread. I see it being very widespread in the West, right? So a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, like, I'm not going to act as if like Turkey is like this paradise in every single sense, but like a lot of what you're talking about, that's like a lot of that is like problems that you see in the West a lot, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these issues. And I definitely like agree with the whole like kind of like, you got to like start with kind of your son. A lot of people are starting to realize that, and we kind of, I guess we have a lot of people to thank for people realizing that, like Jordan Peterson and others. And not to endorse what they say, I don't endorse them specifically. It's just that like I do agree in the sense that like, if it's not going to be us doing these things, then it's going to be who, right? At the end of the day.
Exactly.
Though I will say that like some of the stuff you talk about, a lot of it is discouraged towards people systematically by like not even just the US government, but like any Western government, any government that takes Western legal systems. It's kind of a lot of like the good stuff that we're talking about is also very much discouraged by institutionally discouraged as well. So it's quite difficult nowadays in that sense too.
I feel like another big bad thing is the school system, because the school system is all just a brainwashing, programming stuff. Because they're teaching sex ed to little kids now. They're teaching little kids about transgenders. They're teaching them about all kinds of stuff. Like, oh, you get to pick who you are. Like, for example, I saw this one meme the other day. this chick had a baby, and she's having a baby. It's like, what is it, a boy or a girl? And the doctor said, let the teacher decide that. And I saw this clip came out of the UK. They have these kids in this room, and in this room, there's like 20 people lined up in front of them naked, just to ask them what they thought on that experience. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I saw that clip too. Yeah, that's insane.
Fucked.
That should not be shown to anyone. Not just to kids. No one should see that. Like, no one should see that kind of stuff, let alone kids. And it's horrible.
Like, me personally, like, so I know lots of people. They make out publicly, all kinds of stuff. Like, if I'm kissing someone, I prefer to be in private. I don't really like kissing people in public. Like it's like, I feel like that needs to be a private thing. But you see people doing all kinds of crazy shit in public. Like I see people groping each other. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? It's like, get a bedroom, bro. And then people kind of like, I've noticed, if you a virgin is a bad thing, people try to press on in the West. Like, why are you still a virgin, bro? That's not a good thing. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, so I was a virgin until I was 19, and I thought I loved this person, and I thought they loved me too. Turns out they were just tricking me, and they were sleeping with like 50 dudes a month. Yeah, no, biggest mistake of all, bro. I didn't realize
horrible. Yeah, I'm sorry, bro.
I didn't realize how bad she was. I still meet people to this day that have slept with her, and I'm like, bro, you're in a different state. How did you meet her? But yeah, no, it's a lesson learned. I wish I never did it, but it's a good life lesson not to trust people.
Well, yeah, to a certain extent, I will say. I definitely I definitely had well, not this kind of stuff you're talking about. I didn't have that, but I had my fair share of bad experiences with people as well. But at a certain stage, you just gotta be, I guess. You have to, it's like an experience, right? It's like bad stuff happens to you, you grow, and you learn as an experience at the end of the day. So I think it's definitely the case. I gotta wrap this up pretty soon. I really enjoyed this conversation. I kind of want to, I suppose, because you kind of answered this question as well. So, but I want to ask it again to kind of have your take on it. Like, what should be the goal of like just men in general, in your take, like in modern society, and how can we work to achieve it? You already answered like kind of like the work ethic stuff, right? And kind of like just like doing things that are constructive. Hanging out with constructive people, like positive people that want to like suck your life energy out of it. I can definitely sympathize with that. I used to have a lot of people close to me that will just suck the life out of me, and it will just not be beneficial for me at all. And you really, like, it is true. Like, you really have to, if you don't want to totally cut them off, you definitely have to, like, treat them as a friend group number like 20, like down here, where you just kind of like say, hey, how's it going, right? Just to like see them. But like, that's kind of like definitely like, it's kind of like some groups of people really are like that. But kind of just reiterate my question. I mean, what should young men do? Like, what kind of advice, like what should they kind of like, do you think it's like you just get into business, just start working, or is it like, what worked for you?
Yeah, I think they need to become physically fit. That's a really good one. They need to find God. Physically fit, they need to find God. They need to be responsible. They need to be able to learn how to take care of people besides themselves. They need to become financially stable. They need to, I would recommend, learn how to do a business. Start some type of business. If you don't want to depend on the government. You want to learn as much knowledge as possible. Knowledge, once you learn knowledge, you can learn how to use it, and it can become wisdom. And wisdom is extremely valuable. Patience, and learning how to deal with not some of the best people. I think those are some of the biggest qualities. Because if you work out on a regular basis, okay, if you have enough knowledge and if you're responsible and you find God, all those things, you're going to more than likely become a good man, I feel like. But if you're godless, you're not going to have morals. You need morals in your life. But like, let's say if I didn't believe in God, I would be like, oh, I could just go do this whenever I want. Let's just do this. And it's shit. Like, don't drink, don't do drugs. I think most of that stuff is bad. I'm not perfect, obviously. Like, you guys probably, I've drinking before. I'm not perfect. But I think those are some of the big
I
things.
won't say not drink at all. I will just like, I'm a social drinker myself.
Don't
but
get
like,
drunk.
oh
Specifically.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's in moderation. Drinking is, I think, enjoyable.
Exactly.
Let's say. So I'm like, I used to never drink. Then I started drinking. Not at all, actually. Then I just became a social drinker, right? Like me personally. But I definitely agree with like, don't get drunk, don't do drugs, like stuff like that. Like, it sounds very simple. It's like, oh, your parents tell that, but it's like, you have to have control over yourself, right? Because doing drugs, doing alcohol, there's a common pattern between the two. Like, in terms of like getting drunk, you lose control of yourself, right? That's ultimately the biggest, like one of the biggest sins you can do against yourself at the end of the day. What other stuff you were talking about as well? Sorry for cutting you off.
They need to become physically fit. They need to learn, find God. I feel like that's a really big one, finding God. Because if you have God in your life, I feel like in general you're going to become a better person in your life. It's going to become better, especially if you start praying to God on a regular basis. Because what do they teach us in the Bible? Basically, how to be a good person and have morals, and how to be responsible and how to take care of things. Like, if you just have God alone, that's probably the number best one thing you could do. Like, if you forget about everything else, just God alone, I think that's the best one out of everything. Because if you just read the Bible, or if you just have God alone, that would teach you so many more things. Like, working out is extremely good, yes. Being responsible, but all those things kind of fall under God. I feel like God teaches you to take care of His temple. That could be working out. God teaches you how to be responsible, how to be a man, how to take care of his family, how to take care of his wife. But like me personally, when I get married, I want my wife to take care of my kids, not have a job, and teach them my values. I don't want to have a wife that's going to have a 9-to-5 job and take orders from another guy, and my kids go to a public school system that's going to be like, oh, you're a boy now. You're a girl now. Or you got to wear that skirt if you want to come to school. You got to wear a tail, Like, here locally in the schools here, they're teaching kids how to be a furry, how to be an animal. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like they voted on that, and I believe it passed. I'm like, what? I'm sorry. That's too far.
That's utterly unacceptable. I definitely agree with that. And it's like, these are like, it's kind of sad seeing this kind of stuff, because I see some patterns, even though I think it's gonna take a long time for them to actualize. But I see the patterns also in countries surrounding me and the country that I live in as well. I see some of the patterns at the very least. Like, it seems like that's kind of encroaching here as well. It's quite unfortunate. I got to run off quite soon, so I want to finish this up with the last question. Any kind of future projects that you might be working on? Anything that you work on currently? Kind of just like, again, shout out your current stuff. Like, what are you doing? And we can kind of just end the stream here, right?
Yeah, I do have a future project so you guys all know I have a few different businesses, but besides that, the main thing I want to work on in about a year from now, I do want to make my own platform, and I'm still trying to decide if I want to make a platform more like kind of like Hush's University, where I teach people how to make money and be independent from the government, and how to find God and all that other good stuff, or if I want to become more like a life coach. I'm trying to decide if one of those two. I'm leaning more towards making my own platform, how to teach people how to be independent from the government, how to make wealth, how to find God. But I feel like that's a big thing that most people are lacking, because if you don't have wealth, you're stuck listening to the government. For example, there was a clip the other day that came out of the UK, and they were putting up the pride flags, okay? and this worker was taking down the British flag. And this guy was walking by. He was like, "Hey, mate, you're taking down the wrong flag." And the guy said, "You don't think I don't know that?" Or something like that. And he has to do that to keep money coming in, to take care of his family. If he had wealth, he was independent from the government, he wouldn't have to follow none of that bullshit. And that's something I want to help. Because most people, they don't realize, they say slavery was abolished back in the day. No, everyone's still just a slave. If you have a 9-to-5 job, you're a slave. Like, the only difference from slavery back then was the slavery, you were kept as a slave with physical punishment, okay? If you try to run away, you get whipped, you get punished, okay? They provided you with the food back then. They provided you with shelter and transportation to the work site. Now, you have to provide your own food, your own shelter, your own transportation, just to go to a job that barely makes enough money to get by, and then you have to go home, pass out, wake up the next day, and do it all over again. That's just slavery with extra steps. And instead of a physical whip, now it's a mental game. So slavery is all mental now. And that's how the slave masters develop. Because what's easier? Tricking the people, thinking they're not slaves, okay? Or physically whipping them all the time. If you can trick the masses that they're not slaves and that they're free, that's a billion times easier.
Yeah, I mean, they themselves will defend the system. They will defend the system that they actually in reality want to get out of. I definitely agree with a lot of what you just said, like in terms of like, I think slavery just merely transformed. I think many aspects of it, like it's still here today. At the end of the day, it's a lot of people are subject to it. One thing I would add with like a lot of what you're saying about kind of like, you know, like you have to work on your finances and stuff like that. One of the things that, like, two things that I want to add. Number one is that you can still be mentally part of the system at the end of the day, even if you have financial freedom. So that's also important, right? And you might be, for example, you might use your financial freedom to be a slave to your passions, right? That's basically trading masters, right? It's like it's like a man who follows Satan. You're moving from that to just following Satan at the end of the day. I mean, that's something that should definitely be avoided, right? As well. And secondly, I think at the end of the day, a lot of this is institutional, and it's going to sound kind of like it's not liberal at all. But like a lot of it really is. It really is a social justice issue, like a genuine, actual, real social justice, not the fake social justice stuff that a lot of leftist people talk about, but a real social justice issue for a lot of people, especially in the West, that needs to be resolved. And I think people that have influence, good people that have influence, are the ones that can, at the very least, do something to counteract this. And we see this in various different Eastern European countries. Obviously, these Eastern European countries are not perfect either, right? These people don't represent everything that is going on. That's super valid, like in Russia, Romania, and stuff like that. But I think you see an example of what I'm trying to bring here is that if you kind of end up, you're really becoming financially independent and you support these various different organizations, like Gigi Becali, for example. He's a Romanian businessman. He owns Steaua Bucharest. He's a very pious Orthodox Christian man. Like he's an actually really pious Orthodox Christian man, and he uses his financial freedom to support the Orthodox Church and to support the Romanian people in various different ways, right? So so that's basically the kind of model I think that will be better for a lot. Obviously, there might be some imperfect things that he does. Every human being has imperfect things that they do. But I'm talking about the model that we can kind of follow, that some people at the very least that are able to do this can follow to kind of like really help, like beneficially, both spiritually and bodily, help people out. I definitely agree with that team personally.
And that's probably the big reason why I want get extremely big and influential, so I could help bring more people to God and bring more wealth, so I could help more people who grew up in my situations. Because long term, like before I'm 30, I'm planning, or by the time I'm at least 30, I'm planning on having over billions of dollars. Before the end of this year, I want to be able to have $1 million. And by the end of this year, my goal is pretty high for everything, but hey, reach for the stars, you know? To have over 1 million like followers. I want to spread my message as far as I can, as fast as I can, because I feel like the time is ticking. We only have so much time left to spread God's word in God's name. And I want to spread His name as fast as I can, as fast as possible. So me personally, I feel like we don't have much time left, and so that's probably the biggest reason. And I feel like I don't know. I feel like I'm obligated to do this. I feel obligated to spread God's name and to get as many people to Him as possible, as fast as possible. But I truly do feel like the time is ticking right now.
Yeah, I definitely share your thoughts about that, and I think that pretty much covers all the questions that I had in mind. So I really appreciate you coming here, John.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you having here. I think the conversation was really fun. Really enjoyed this talk. Anything you want to say before we end the stream here? You can just promote your social media stuff as well if you don't have anything to say. It's fine.
No, I already promoted my social media at the beginning. The only thing I want to say is, if you guys are a fan of mine and you haven't found God yet, I highly recommend read the Bible at least once. Read one page out of there anywhere, and walk out. Become financially stable. God, walk out financially stable. Go do that. And yeah, God will bless you. And anything you truly need, if you pray to God and you truly accept Him, He will provide. I would say I'm living proof of it. But I had this plan, and everything is coming true from what I prayed to God back in December, and everything's just happening the way I planned it and prayed to God, and it's all happening. So I think, I don't know, I feel like I'm living proof of God. Yeah, so, to the all high, everything is from God. I guess Top J's out, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Definitely. I really appreciate you having here, John. And hopefully, we'll keep seeing you online as well. And thank you all for checking this stream out. This was Top J with David Arhan, and we'll see you guys later. Take care and goodbye.
Peace.